Welcome back, everyone, to another entrepreneuring podcast brought to you by the Arrowhead Center at NMSU. My guest today is Lea from crucescreatives.org. Welcome, Lea.
Howdy. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate you taking the time to stop by. I had a chance to take a quick look at your website, but I'm excited to learn more about it. What exactly is Cruces Creatives? I have a problem with two C's back to back, apparently.
So essentially, Cruces Creatives is a makerspace, and one quick way to think about it, it's basically like a gym membership, but for tools. So when you have a membership, you have access to a wood shop, metalworking tools, a lot of our newer tech like 3D printers, laser cutter, the new softwares that go with these things, and then even some more of our hand tools like getting into textiles and a little bit of mold making in there too.
How did you put this together? I'm assuming you didn't have all of these awesome tools just laying around.
No, it's been a long journey getting there, and still in the process. I would say at the moment we probably have a good 40% of the tools we need to be able to open up our doors and have a good beginning set. But essentially, my background, I have both a bachelor's and a master's of fine arts, where I was able to use all of these different tools and programming. And, I realized not only for myself that the moment I graduate, I lose all of these tools, but so do all of my fellow artists. And even importantly, on top of that is there is no resource publicly for anybody to be able to access these tools, even though they are hugely empowering to anybody who wants to create. So our other entrepreneurs, we're looking at hobbyists in town, we're looking at, general children who want to and need to learn these different creative skills. So it really spreads over the whole community.
So that's great, and I went to art school, and the same thing. So that's awesome that you were kind of inspired to create this space where you would not lose access, and not only you but your fellow artists would not lose access to this type of creative environment.
Absolutely. By the way, what material were you in?
I was in illustration track, so mostly paints, ink, and pencils for the most part.
Fantastic.
But I also learned how to weld in there, which I never thought I was going to do, but it was just part of the track apparently. And that's definitely something I still do not have access to now that I'm out of school.
Right.
Yeah. So what brought you to Las Cruces specifically?
That is a fantastic question. So when I started this journey about 9 years ago, I realized I have one shot to do this. And I took it really seriously, and I spent the entire summer of 2009 researching cities, and I ended up focusing on the outer western states. I love the diversity on the western side. I love the sort of mindsets that come with it, the multiculturalism that's usually on the outer western states. And so the first half of the summer, I did data crunching, and I was looking for a medium-sized city that was growing. It shouldn't be on a fault line. What were their major industries in? How did they vote? What was their cost of living like? And I made myself a list. I think at the end of it, I had about 30 cities on my list. And the second half of my summer, I went on an 8,000-mile road trip. And every day I would drive to a new city, and I would go to their downtown library first and foremost, and I would pull out their city budget for 3 years. And I wanted to see, were they in the black or the red? What were their long-term plans as a city? How clear was their city budget? How put together they were, and also how honest that city was. Because there was a couple cities where you could tell they were hiding a huge amount of debt that they just weren't trying to let the public know about. So to me, that was really important, because I feel like, not only does your city have a huge impact on the quality of life, it can make or break a lot of opportunities, and especially when looking at a public facility like a makerspace, because we are modeling ourselves as a nonprofit. So, did all that research. And then after being at the libraries, I would, I'd spend some time. I would look at how clean were the streets, how nice were the people. And out of all the locations that I went to, I fell in love with Las Cruces. And it took me another 3 years until I could come down here, but I was able to. And it's incredible to be here now actually working on this business when this is where I wanted to be.
Well, that's just, I mean, that's an incredible story. The amount of research and thought that you put into where you were going to move, where you were going to build this. And I don't think I've ever thought about, the economic state of a city and how it would impact a public space like this. And clearly you have.
Absolutely. It's sort of interesting. I think was looking at it in a way of, I want this to be successful. I want this to be a place where, I'm going to settle, right? Like I want to live here and I want to be happy and I want my business to thrive. And also looking that we're probably at a point in history where things are going to be a little challenging. And so finding a city that basically they're on top of it, right? They're balancing their budget well. They have good plans to be able to work on their living situation. So, they are focusing on having more parks. They're making sure they can bring an airport in the area. They are focusing on helping their entrepreneurs even more. Like, these are really important things to make sure that our particular city keeps growing.
Is there what advice would you give for folks that want to do the same amount of footwork as you did before pursuing anything even remotely like this?
Absolutely. So I think there's two things I would recommend here. First is thinking about what it is that they want. Like for myself, I wanted a medium-sized city because I wanted to be able to help shape the city, help grow with the city, without needing a whole bunch of capital. Whereas, if I ended up in San Fran, like I'm never going to be able to have the capital or the voice to do much there. But I realized like a medium-sized city, you get all of the amenities of a city while still being small enough that you can get to know your local representatives. You can get to know your local nonprofits. You can be involved with the major institutions and help have a mission to help with that city too. Like there's still places to grow. So one is like just some really critical thinking about what is it that you want. And then two, I loved citydata.com. where they have probably, 150 plus data points to be able to examine. And, you can then take a look at, like what is the safety of that city? Like, we were recently named the 32nd safest city in the US. Right. So I'm like, that's a great thing. Like I'm concerned about that. Like I want to start a family. But within that website, it was fantastic, whether it was talking about safety, whether it was talking about weather, whether it was talking about the economic system, looking at, what were the major industries in, like who has the most employees in the area, and breaking it all down so you can make a very reasonable choice about why you're going somewhere.
Again, it's blowing my mind because I've moved around and I did not put this much thought into it, and I probably should have. So, I mean,
you got it now.
Thanks. I'll definitely use it for my next move. But I mean, what an absolutely incredible journey. I mean, I'm sure. Other than resources, I'm sure there's just so many lessons you've learned along the way. If not that you need to bombard me with every lesson you've ever learned, but is there one that kind of pops out as the lesson that you would really want to share with everybody, that you would, what advice could you give for anyone just out there trying to get whatever it is, their product, their business started?
Patience. Like more than anything, almost everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. And being willing to hold out long enough to make it happen. And not to be surprised when it takes a long time either. It's really incredible the way that most, whether it's social movements or it's businesses or it's even, changing a personal habit, how long these things take. And so when you're looking at building a business, it's the same way too. It's going to take a lot of patience and just stick with it.
It's so easy to get discouraged. And like you said, once you decided on Las Cruces, there was a 3-year gap from you just making that decision and working up to the point where you could execute on it.
Yep.
And that's just awesome. And then, I mean, obviously we're here, we're doing this podcast because of Arrowhead. I mean, how has the Arrowhead Center helped you out?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I think two of the really big things they've been able to do is, first off, making sure I have the expert advice that I need. So, great example is one of the days, being a nonprofit, we have special tax rules, and being able to get, a couple CPAs to sit down with me and explain, some of the more complicated tax rules that I'll be looking at. So, personally, being a startup, right, I can't afford that expert advice yet. And so them being able to take that opportunity and help me out with that. And the second one is, they have a huge amount of events and opportunities to meet, whether it's other experts, whether it's other entrepreneurs in the area. And I've been so lucky to have that opportunity because I've made a ton of partnerships with the folks that I've met here. I've made friends with other entrepreneurs, which is great when, you can be with those other people who are taking that slow time too and being able to just talk about it. And most importantly, being able to be a part of then this entrepreneur and business culture here.
There's so many resources, right? And such a big thing I hear time and time again from when I talk to folks on this podcast, hear their stories. It's just being able to talk to someone else that has been through what you're about to step into. Well, Lea, what an incredible story! But also, Cruces Creatives. That's also awesome. I mean, your website, we already mentioned crucescreatives.org, but where else can folks go if they want to keep up, want more information about your creative space?
Absolutely. So the other one would be Facebook. We have a great website. We got about 600 people following right now. It's still a little quiet because the biggest thing I'm working on right now is figuring out our lease agreement. But the moment we get that lease agreement done is the moment we're in the space, cleaning it up and getting the tools inside. Expect to see all sorts of news on there all the time.
Well, wonderful. Definitely check it out. Facebook.com/Cruces Creatives and crucescreatives.org. Thank you again, Lea.
And thank you very much, Garrett.
Thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interviews with entrepreneurs. And visit arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu to learn how New Mexico State University can help you launch your business.